Next curve.
Hi, everyone. This is Leonard Lee, Executive Analyst at Next Curve. And you know what? We have a Data Diva 911 situation happening, or at least it happened last week with Microsoft's announcement and showcase of their ChatGPT-ish incarnation, which they call new Bing of their Bing. And you know what, Debbie, you and I, we saw the press release as well as all the news that's coming out that Microsoft and is all of a sudden going to change the world with their AI infused search. And then, of course, Google comes out with their own response with Bard, and Bard just simply choked. That was not a great calculation on the part of the Google folks, right? But hey, this is Data Diva 911 time, and we want to talk about this, my friend.
I love that you asked me these questions because I just think it's so funny to watch the whole thing. So where do we start? Where do we start? With who? Who first? Who first?
You know, let's talk about. Let's just talk about whether or not these things work or not. I mean, one of the things that Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, clearly stated 2 months ago, okay, this stuff may be good enough to convince you that it gives you an impression of greatness, is the way he put it. But this technology, okay, and these applications that we're starting to see still need a lot of work before they can be truthful, accurate, and, you know, quite honestly, useful. And, you know, his message was, hey, have fun.
Yeah.
You know? But, I mean, can you really put this type of thing on top of the internet, basically? Right. And then expect it to provide you with the kind of utility that we typically expect out of a search engine. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That we expect of the search engine, but also this process that we typically go through, which is called research. Right.
Yeah.
So
All right.
I'll lay it out for you. And by the way, I had a chance to tinker around with new Bing, and I'll share some of my feedback later. But you know, this is Data Diva 911 time. So, Debbie.
Oh God, let's see.
What's up?
Well, first of all, ChatGPT is quite extraordinary in terms of what it can do. Their evaluation is based on not only the number of people who are signing up for it, but the data that people have been giving it. So it's gaining value by you using it because it's using what you're doing to train itself. So it's kind of like, instead of testing, they're just kind of throwing it out. They're like, hey, let's see what it can do. I think, you know, a lot of focus has been focused on search. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife. It can do all types of things. It can do things that it's not advertised that it can do. So I'm having fun trying to figure out what those things are and how that is helpful to me. I would not ever ask a chatbot for their, you know, for research or whatever. I mostly, like, for example, like I'll say, if I have an article, I'll throw it in there like, hey, can you summarize this? Or if I have notes, you know, put it in the outline format. So I use it a lot to structure stuff. But, you know, all you hear about is search. And I think that's kind of a narrow use of it. I don't see how it would help me to search, because the way that I want to search, I don't want any filters. I don't want, you know, so ChatGPT, let's say, you ask for a chicken salad recipe. It's going to give you a chicken salad recipe. You don't know if it's good or not, right? And you tell it to add chocolate chips, it'll just throw it in there. It doesn't know that you're not supposed to put chocolate chips in there. But you and I know, like, we've never gone to school to learn that, but somehow our humanness, we've learned in our wisdom. And so AI is not wise. It can't ever be wise. It can't be like a human like us. So us trying to make it seem like it's human and make it do stuff. Like I saw articles about judges trying to use it, to make judgments in cases, or people in medical things trying to use it for diagnosis. I'm like, no, 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 no. This is really not supposed to be doing it.
Yeah.
But I think, these companies are really going crazy because they want to be on the next new thing that people, really want to do. Because really what they want to do is find a way to monetize this audience. So they see people have an appetite for it. As with a lot of technologies, it's like, let me sell it to you and then you're stuck with it. Even though I think a lot of people don't know what to do with it. I hear people on the internet, they're like, hey, tell me how much taller is the Kimbe Mutombo than Harvey Villachez or something stupid like that, So it's like, you find something useful that you can actually do with it that'll help you.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned value or valuation. I think that's it's an interesting point you're bringing up, because what are you evaluating, and what's the basis? Is it something substantial, or is it just something completely trivial? For instance, let me see if I can turn this off. Are they monetizing curiosity versus utility and something valuable? And I think we've yet to discover the services and applications that could actually be valuable, right? One of the things that I found with my time with New Bing is that I just selected one of the sample queries, and what it returned to me, it looked like a legitimate, well-articulated response, right? It's basically bullet points, number of options for cars that fit a certain set of criteria that were part of the query. Now, the problem is that as you went and you started to look at the cited articles, you realize the details that were represented in the chatbot response were not reflected in the actual article. Right. Furthermore, the information in the chatbot response was wrong. Now, I'm only sharing what I actually saw. Okay.
Right.
And so you have a tool that can provide you with exactly what Sam Altman was saying. It can provide you with an impression of greatness.
But when very confident.
When you start clicking down, you realize that this thing is completely wrong. And so going back to the purpose of search is to facilitate research, which is, intrinsically a part of that workflow of, finding information, right? And in that process of finding, useful information, we have a number of filters, cognitive filters, that we apply to whatever is presented to us by a search tool. Now, the problem I see here is that we're relying on an unreliable AI application to do the important part of search. And so, I kind of jokingly put together what I thought is going to be, what a lot of folks are going to encounter as the New Bing workflow, which is literally you go and you make a query, and then you're going to spend an exorbitant amount of time validating whether or not that response was correct, and with what seems to be a likely chance that you got a bad response. I mean, it's inaccurate. It's not correct. It doesn't save you time. You know what I'm saying? And
no.
It's interesting. I don't
not in that application though. So so it will. I've asked it questions, and I say, very confidently, it says, "Hey, here's the answer," and I say, "Give me the resources, cite where you got this information," and almost all the time, like let's say if I tell a site, gives me 10 things like only two of them are actual real things. Or I mean, like it'll make up titles for people who don't exist, so it looks very official,
Right.
it's a very good spell check. Like you could just dump something in there and it'll totally correct the spelling and punctuation and stuff. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's not accurate for that. I highly would not recommend people do it for research. It doesn't help. I think if you want to research, I would say go out and find the thing you want to look at and then ask it to summarize it for you. That's probably the best way to do
Really?
it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Well, hey, let's take it to privacy now. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what we've experienced, but what's your take on a privacy front? Because a lot of people are just, they're helping to train this thing, right? Obviously, with their query.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It reminds me a bit of what has been happening over the years when people use like Google Translate. I have to tell people like don't put confidential information into Google Translate because the people, Google's gonna own whatever it is that you put in there or whatever. So I wouldn't put anything in there that's
oh,
confidential
geez.
or any
Yeah.
way. But I mean, people they is in front of them, they see it, they kind of throw whatever, and I highly don't recommend that. I think, the concern is, and I'll just tell you a funny story, and this is about plagiarism. So the concern is that these applications are going out, sucking all the stuff on the internet. Not everything that's internet accessible is should be public, right? So a
Right.
lot of people, we see a lot of cyber incidents where, some big company, their S3 bucket isn't secure and all this stuff. So these apps now, they're going out actively looking for data that they can suck in. So some of people's
Right.
intellectual property, all that stuff is being sucked in these models. And once it gets sort of mixed into the goulash, it's hard to be able to figure out, you're like, hey, this is my word. But I was playing around with the there's some apps people are coming out with to try to tell if something's AI generated or not. And I was just playing around with it with my own writing. And it literally said that I was plagiarizing my own work. It's like, think about this. Think about this. You publish stuff on the internet, right?
Yeah.
If you take something you've written and put it in there, it says that you're plagiarizing, but you're basically it's looking at stuff that you wrote and saying that you are the person that's plagiarizing, even though it's your own stuff.
Yeah.
It's bananas. That's trash. That doesn't work.
Yeah, or you can look at it as being very accurate because if you plagiarizing yourself is actually legitimate if you think about it, right? So as long as you're plagiarizing yourself, folks, you're okay.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of questions that start to come up as people start to use the applications, and then the folks who are existing contributors or have their content exposed into the corpus that is the internet or the web are going to start to challenge the use of what I think a lot of these search, like what Microsoft and others are going to claim is public information.
Right.
And to your point, just because it's on the web doesn't make it for public use or commercial or certain types of uses. And so, it boils down to, okay, is there a robust enough mechanism for things that are either confidential or of restricted use to be used in these models, like you said, because they're going to monetize these responses, right?
Yeah.
In fact, I think if you ask ChatGPT to create a poem for you, they own the poem. And if you do a derived, work off of it, you have to get permission from probably in the future the AI that generated this thing, and of course it's going to be owned by whoever is hosting that AI application, right?
That's right.
Application. So
I did a video a few years ago about derivative works, about how that doesn't belong to you. So really, the only thing that they have that they can give back to you, maybe depending on how the AI works, is your original stuff. But anything that they've derived from that, that may not be yours anyway.
Right. Right.
Which is the problem. They can say, hey, we just, we put a red hat on your poem and then now it's ours, so yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think beyond what we are observing in terms of sort of this uh, gathering of personalization or personal information or proxy thereof, I think there's a lot of implications of this kind of thing, especially if you're a registered user and you're making queries that are actually conversational and much more contextual than what we typically are doing with, let's say, keyword searches or whatever, or
Right.
even some basic natural language queries, which most search engines employ these days. Um, I think that is a big question mark for me, but I think a lot of people are blindly just going in and assuming, hey, all this stuff is personal, privacy protected without I mean, in some of the cases there is no fine print for a lot of this stuff
Right.
yet,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, they're playing in the sandbox of the gaps that we have in our laws. That's what's happening. So data scraping is legal
Yeah.
in the US. So it's not illegal to do what they've done. The issue comes when they start to take someone's actual work and try to monetize it. So someone can say, hey, this is my, IP, this is my trademark stuff, and you've sort of taken it. And then we have this whole thing, let's put a skirt on it and it's different, then
Yeah.
it actually, maybe it is, So I think that, lawyers are going to make a lot of money with this, fighting through this. And I think, my view, I have many different views about AI that I could talk about, but one is you either use it or it will use you. There is like no middle ground.
That's interesting.
That's it.
Yeah, wise words to go by. So, hey, any final thoughts before we wrap up this special Data Diva 911 episode of privacy and trust?
Yeah, I just think I'm finding it pretty humorous to watch these different companies fall over each other trying to, race to get to the front of this. And in my view, I think the winners in the end of the day will be kind of these small companies that try to make it more customizable to people who actually want to use it. So I don't need like billions of search results. Like, let's say in my company, I want to be able to search the corpus of data that's in my possession and do it in a conversational way. That would be like a huge deal, I think, for a lot of companies.
Yeah, I think it's a can of worms that has been opened up. It's just we don't know how many worms are going to come out of the can and how long they are, and whether or not they're good worms or bad worms.
That's right.
And I think we have a big issue of trust here, where people are putting trust in a technology that clearly the people who are evolving the technology have said this is not, this is what it does, and this is what it doesn't. And right now, a lot of attention is being built and hype being built around what it clearly doesn't do. And and so I think in the next year we're going to see this hype play out, and there's going to be a lot of learning in the
Mm-hmm.
process. So in that regard, I think you're right. It's going to be fun.
I think so. I'm having fun with it. So
Yeah.
I would
Okay.
never use AI for a high risk stakes thing anyway. So me,
Yep.
it's fun.
As you have stated on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. So, hey, so everybody, thank you for tuning into this special Data Diva 911 episode of our series, Privacy and Trust, here on reThink. And remember to follow Debbie Reynolds at www.debbiereynolds consulting.com, and remember to follow Next Curve at www.next-curve.com, and we will see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.